Every audiophile needs a pair of really good closed-back wired headphones. They are far more versatile than open backs. You can listen to them without annoying your family, as they tend to leak sound far less than their open back brethren. You can also take them out and about and use them in noisy coffee shops, as they do passively block some of the ambient noise. However, they also tend to suffer from some technical limitations due to their closed-back nature. Usually they lack a wide open soundstage, and they can frequently sound a little bit muffled and somewhat boomy. The Meze 99 Classics are really popular in the audio community, and these feature a stunning design with those wooden ear cups and polished metal elements combining to make them really stand out. However, having tried them, I found them to be overly warm and slightly veiled with recessed mids. And to be honest, they're just a little bit flashy for me to consider using out and about. So today we're going to take a look at another pair of closed back over ears that do try and emulate the snazzy design of the Mezes. They're also made of wood, whilst also trying to avoid that nasty closed back sound limitation. Say hello to these, which are the Sivga Orioles. Now you might recall that I tested Sivga's top of the range SVO23 open backs recently, and I really like them. I found them to be worthy competition for the likes of the Sennheiser HD650. So I had really high hopes for the Orioles. Now the Orioles are the successor to the SVO21 Robin, which looked stunning and by all accounts were a decent pair, but apparently they had a very bloated bass. Now I've not heard them, so I can't possibly comment. The Orioles are priced similarly to the Mezes at around £199 here in the UK, and they're much cheaper than the £400 SV23s. The packaging still feels very premium, and inside the box we get the cans themselves, a simple cloth pouch, and a 3.5mm, there it is, 3.5mm single-ended cable rather than a 4.4mm balance cable that came with the SVO23s. Personally, I think the Orioles look absolutely stunning. They come in this dark brown wood and black finish, as well as a much lighter brown with brown fake leather. I prefer the darker look that we get on this pair. I think that these look more understated than the Mezes, and I'd be happy to wear these out and about. The braided cable feels quite tough, and once again the terminations into the ear cups are unfortunately of the 2.5mm type, which is a real shame, as it's much harder to find replacements than it is for 3.5mm plugs that come with the Mezes and many other headphones besides. I tested the Orioles with the stock cable and also with the balanced 4.4mm cable from the SV23s through my FIO M11 Plus ESS version. Now these are pretty easy to drive with an impedance of only 32 ohms and a high sensitivity, so you could easily power them from your iPhone dongle, for example. Now they are incredibly comfortable to wear. There is generous memory foam padding across the headband, and the ear cups are beautifully cushioned, again with memory foam. They feel quite light, and the clamping force isn't high at all. So I put them through their paces with my usual wide range of music, and the first thing that struck me is, wow, these things have an incredibly wide and open soundstage for a pair of closed backs. Now they're definitely not quite as wide and open as the likes of the Sundaras, which are open back headphones, but honestly for closed backs this is really very impressive. Listening to the expansive Interstellar soundtrack, for example, More Magic, courtesy of Hans Zimmer, the orchestral staging is very impressive on the track Stay, as it slowly builds up in intensity. The imaging is also spot on. Listening to Radiohead's In Rainbows album, there was a very clear soundstage, and the percussion in particular on Reckoner was presented with pinpoint precision. Instrument separation, particularly in the upper mid-range, is really good, with percussion once again being very distinct in the mix. Detail retrieval is pretty good at this price point. It's nowhere near as good as the Sundaras, but it's easily better than the Mezes, which I thought sounded just a little bit gauzy. So the technicalities are surprisingly good. I also really like the frequency response. Now these are definitely not bass head headphones, but there is some sub bass and plenty of mid bass. It's got some depth and presence, but it's never boomy and it doesn't bleed into the lower mids. The bass guitar solo on Giorgio by Moroder from Daft Punk's unimpeachable Random Access Memories album sounds lively and visceral, exactly as it should. The mids on the Orioles are super smooth and slightly vocal forward, which makes for a really engaging listen. Male vocals, I think, are absolutely perfect. Fire up Superman's Dead by Our Lady Peace. If you haven't heard that track, definitely go and check it out. It's a brilliant kind of early 2000s rock, actually late 90s, early 2000s rock classic. And Rain Mader's impassioned vocals really stand out. But the guitars are well defined too, and there's no one element in the mix that sounds overwhelming. Even a less polished recording like Franz Ferdinand's first album sounds terrific. The riff on the track Take Me Out is really very distinct, shall we say, without becoming shrill, as it can do on some headphones. So despite being closebacks, these put me in mind, rather bizarrely, of my old favourites, the Grado SR225s, which for many years were my favourite headphones for listening to rock music. But I would say the Orioles have a touch more bass and actually an overall better bass response. If I have one criticism, it is that there is a touch of sibilance in the upper mid-range and lower treble region. Most of the time it's well controlled, but some female vocalists, like for example Sia, when she's belting out those high notes, can come across with a touch more sibilance than I would usually prefer. The rest of the treble, however, is really well controlled and very nice and detailed and pretty sweet. In fact, I would say that after listening to these for the past couple of weeks, they've become one of my favourites for pure enjoyment. They're not perfectly neutral, but I love the subtle level of excitement that they add, both in the bass and actually in the upper mid-range. They suit rock and EDM music particularly well, which is fortunate because that's most of what I listen to. The fact that they look absolutely stunning and feel so comfortable to wear just adds to their appeal. So yes, the Orioles have been a really pleasant surprise for me, and I'm happy to hand them a very rare Audio Fixation Gold Award. They have been an unexpected treat, and I'm very grateful to Sivga for sending them to me for evaluation. They haven't paid me for the review, they haven't inspected the contents of the review, they're seeing it at the same time as you, and they haven't sponsored the video. So these are my independent thoughts, but I would definitely recommend them to you if you're after a pair of really good mid-range closed backs. So that's all for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you tempted by these? If you do want to see my review of the SVO23, also a great pair of headphones by the way, keep watching for a link to that, and I'll catch you in the next video.